There are many sorcerers in Jujutsu Kaisen, and some of them are some of the most powerful beings on Earth. But in the grand cast that we have gotten for this series, getting, got, gotten for this series, we have to consider the fact that there are some who just frankly could be stronger. Whether this is due to the fact that they are just underpowered in the story as it is, or the fact that some of them do have the potential to be stronger but just haven't unlocked it yet, I think there is a room for a lot of improvement with these characters. So let's go ahead and get to it. But before we do, please be sure to subscribe to the channel so I can keep bringing more anime content to you. So first on this list is a character who arguably is very powerful. I mean, he's technically in the special grade category. It's just his achievements on the show and in the manga are not as great as some others. But he's still very powerful, which is why he's actually so low on the list, and that is Choso. Now, I don't actually have any problems with Choso, and I think he'd be fine if he stayed the way he was from a fight perspective. But because in Jujutsu Kaisen everyone's personalities and story arcs are tied so closely to their powers, I do think he needs to undergo another form of evolution or empowerment so that he can transition to being an even better big brother. What form that would take, I'm not entirely sure. There's another character on this list who has a similar set of abilities to him, and you can probably guess who that is. But I feel like there, with blood manipulation, there's more room just for developing moves more than anything else, but maybe there are other combat techniques they can learn with it. In the case of Choso, I feel like he has an easier path to this because he can just substitute cursed energy for blood and therefore never run out, so he probably has more maneuverability in learning new moves than a lot of other characters do. Now, the next character on this list is one whom we haven't seen a lot of in the series. We know that their technique is very useful, but I think that when it comes to sorcerers who could use an upgrade, Kirara is one of them. Now, they are a very interesting character. Their technique, Love Rendezvous, is certainly one of the more mechanically interesting in the series, being able to essentially separate objects and startling and halting the approach of enemies or other targets to a certain goal. That having been said, there's only one offensive use for it, which is applying the same marker to two different objects so they collide. That can be useful, but ultimately I don't think it applies very much in a world where people control, infinity and can summon an army of monsters. Does that mean that Kirar can get an upgrade for this curse technique? Like, can it be more powerful? Possibly. I think Jujutsu Kaisen is one of the few series that any character can work to at least become a grade 1. But what that form would take, again, much like with Choso, I'm not entirely sure. There's just such ambiguity with this ability that I'm not sure what it would be. If anything, we'd have to see Kirara go through more physical training to be a better fighter, but that doesn't fit their style either. So for right now, and why they're so low on the list is, I just don't see them being a more of a combat-orientated participant in any of the battles. Now, the next character on the list is one who we have seen participate in combat, even though she does stay to more of a support role, and that is Nishimiya. Now, I feel like Nishimiya has an interesting upgrade solution because she can control cursed tools. Now, technically, this is often applied, and the only time we've actually seen it applied is to her broom. It's what allows her to fly around on it, she can maneuver it, she can fire wind blasts out of it. But her actual technique is listed as cursed tool manipulation. I would assume that would mean she could apply this effect to other cursed tools, she just chooses not to. So I think the upgrade for her, obviously, is to be able to figure out how to manipulate other cursed objects and tools. And given the, frankly, startling armories that we've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen for both the big free houses and for the school itself, there's plenty for her to choose from. And to be honest, she could be almost a Toji-esque character in the way she could have different weapons for different scenarios. Whether that would happen or not, I'm not sure, but it's probably her best path to getting upgraded in the rest of the series. Now, earlier I said that Choso could get an upgrade, and I mentioned there was somebody else on this list who had very similar abilities to him, and it's Noritoshi. It's Noritoshi Kamo, and it's pretty obvious why he needs an upgrade. The poor dude just keeps getting, lost. I don't mean he loses matches, he just gets lost in the middle of his battles, and then he loses. I think this comes down to him not kind of fully breaking out of the shell of his family and his clan yet. We still have yet to see him fully transition from that. Whether he will or not by the end of the series is up for debate and up to Gege to decide, but there is definitely a path forward for him, more than I think for Choso because he's not as powerful. And that is, he just needs to develop stronger rapport with his curse technique. We already got some of this. We saw it in the fact that he really started utilizing the fact that his family's blood is toxic to cursed spirits, and that he can essentially run the blood outside of his body like a dialysis machine, meaning he's not necessarily bound to the problem of running out of blood like he used to be. But there's still probably more he can do with it. Creating more elaborate constructs from blood would probably be one of them, as well as getting more creative with its usage in terms of angles. Something like piercing blood, being able to go around corners, would probably be very powerful, and if he ever figured out how to do it, it would dramatically alter and shift the battles he was in. And of course, there is a reason why the Kamo clan is one of the big three, and it would be kind of cool to at least see that partially represented. Next up on this list is one of our former main cast from Zero and now very prominent side characters, but Panda. Panda has always been a bit more of a background character than some of the other Jujutsu sorcerers, but he has always been close to anyone who's been the main character in this series. And it's always been a little sad to me that he kind of never really got a great moment to shine outside of his relatively mock battle with Mechamaru. Don't get me wrong, I love that battle. It's just kind of the last time he really got to shine. He has a great battle against Gato in Zero, but in the manga he just kind of gets owned by him. And later, when we probably could see some more out of Panda in the Culling Games arc, he gets owned by, Lightning Guy. What's his name? Kashimo. Kashimo. So I think that Panda has some room here for development. I don't think we're going to necessarily see it in the series, but truth be told, I think it's probably something to the equivalent of being able to merge all three cores. Like, if he could maintain the balance of the Panda mode, have the apparent defensive ability of the Triceratops core, which didn't work originally, and then the increased output of Gorilla mode, I think that would be exceedingly strong. Of course, on the flip side, because there's nothing that would technically block this, it would be also interesting if we see Panda start making other cursed corpses. Technically, we know there's another character that now knows how to do this, but it would be more interesting if Panda essentially became the Frankenstein's monster carrying on Frankenstein's work, as it were. And, yeah, there's something interesting. We don't know if he knows all about his father's technique, but if he did, him providing an army of cursed corpses would definitely be an interesting contribution to the series. Now, next up, and fittingly right next to Panda, I would have to say that Toge is another character who really could use an upgrade in power. In this case, I don't think it needs to be anything too dramatic like new moves. I think he just needs to have a higher constitution while using his ability. Whether that comes from increased cursed resilience in his body, like repeatedly layering it and strengthening his body, or just becoming more used to it, or lowering the cost of his ability. All of these would be worthy contributions, and if he did all of them, thereby allowing him to use his cursed speech more accurately and without as much blowback, I think that would be enough. He's always a character that's always been cool, especially to me, and I think with a lot of the fan base, so he doesn't need to go as far as some others on this list. He's just kind of not as relevant, like Panda, as he used to be. So a little upgrade would go a long way. Now we get into somebody who I know a large portion of the audience was rooting for originally, and that's Miwa. I know it kind of seems funny that Miwa is essentially a almost tertiary character at stages. She comes from Kyoto, so she's not even in the Tokyo high school, and she doesn't even have a curse technique. But in some ways, I think that's why she's endeared to the audience, not to mention her connection to Mechamaru and a few of the other character appearances she's made really did make an impact. It's just too bad that her abilities are never one of the things that make an impact. And to be frank, she does have good abilities. She is being trained by Kusakabe, who is the second-year instructor at Tokyo Jujutsu High School, and is a grade 1 sorcerer on par with Meimei. But he doesn't have a curse technique. By rights, this should mean that Miwa is capable of being a grade 1 sorcerer. And we've seen grade 1 sorcerers, even without techniques, do miraculous feats, like being able to block maximum attacks and survive horrible incidents that would kill most lesser sorcerers. Do I think it would be awesome to get to see Miwa achieve this? Yes. And do I also think it'd be reasonable? Yes. Do I think she's going to be owning Sukuna or any of the other main bad guys in the series at this stage? No. But I think in a group concerted effort, she's definitely holding her own. And especially even if there are a couple of like grade 1 special grade curses thrown around as distractions, I think it would be cool to see her be able to take those out on her own. Now, the next entry on this list is a bit of a provisional entry because he's a character that isn't currently around in the manga, but he is in the anime. And in both instances, regardless of where he is, I really need him to be upgraded in power, and that is Megami. I think Megami has this perfect parallel story with Yuji where they're both taking semi separate paths, but they're both achieving the same thing in the end. And I feel like that is a very interesting parallel story running, and I'd like to see Megami essentially continue to develop. I'd like to see, to be honest, a completed version of Chimera Shadow Garden. We've gotten repeated glimpses of it from its first appearance in the anime to where, well, last we saw it in the manga, where it had started to get a shape. He could apply it to a building to essentially have it form into a rigid structure, and it started growing a spine. No idea why it's growing a spine, but it was apparently not fully complete yet. So I would love to see what this is. I don't know if this essentially allows him to create fully realized versions of the Shadow Chimeras that he's been making. I don't know if this turns into, some people speculate that there is a, for lack of a better phrasing, if you don't know what it is, there's a giant skeleton in Japanese mythology that essentially is like 15 feet tall and is known for just randomly killing strangers. A lot of people theorize this could be the final form of Chimera Shadow Garden, and it certainly could be. I think that either way, we need to see this domain completed, and as an extra step, I would actually love if this was an open domain. Like, I know that's supposed to be an extremely rare ability, but it makes so much more sense. If he could just do what Sukuna does and unleash his domain in, like, even just a 200-meter radius, having dozens of, divine dogs all running around taking out multiple opponents would be incredibly powerful. Now, Megami has at least gotten some development, but a character who's gotten only marginal development and who I feel could get some seriously big boosts is Nobara. Now, in the case of Nobara, I would actually think that her upgrade should be blatantly obvious because Yuji has a Black Flash, and I'm aware that Nobara has a Black Flash, but I don't think she should because Megami has a domain expansion. So I think Nobara should have a maximum technique. And it fits really well with her style, too. If she ran a maximum technique through Straw Doll, who knows what the far reaching effects of that could be? Could she warp somebody's body similar to Idol Transfiguration? I mean, it is a voodoo doll, and that's kind of their original purpose. Could she control somebody? Could she, like, use only the bare essence of something to actually cause major physical damage? There's a lot of different routes that could take, and I think that would be the best version. Plus, it would mean that all three of our main trio have unlocked all three of the pinnacles in some way or another. Yuji with the Black Flash, Megami with his domain expansion, and Nobara with a maximum. So that would be really cool and offer an interesting symbology in the series. Now, the last character on this list may or may not surprise you, but where I've been leading is Yuji. The interesting thing is that I think Yuji's getting plenty powerful already, but the two main routes that he will have to take to essentially achieve being the main character of a shonen manga by the end of his own series is that my guess is he will either have to be a completely physically resolved character, like he will be a master of hand-to-hand combat and all that means in Jujutsu sorcery, including having access to like domain amplification and maybe even simple domain, both of which I think would fit him well, and I would be fine with that. The flip side is a lot of people other than that say that he should have a curse technique. Some people say that he should have one related to his family, because as we found out way later in the series, there is some sorcerer blood in his family. The other one is that they say he should inherit Sukuna's technique. I don't disagree that he should have Sukuna's technique. He certainly had the parasite on him long enough. But whether Gegi will actually give that to him or not, I kind of doubt it. It just doesn't seem to be shaping up that way. I'll be happily surprised if it is, but I see Yuji going more in the direction of mastering all of the physical and learnable techniques in Jujutsu sorcery. And that pretty much wraps up our list of 10 sorcerers who could be stronger. Why don't you let me know in the comments who you think should be stronger, and leave a like so I can keep making more videos like this for you.